Okay, through some technical difficulties. Can everyone hear okay? Yep. Awesome. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk for a little while. I'm not going to talk for too long, I hope. And then I'd like to turn it over to you to ask questions. And my rule with questions is that it's respectful, and I can answer it, I'll answer it. If it's disrespectful, then I won't. And if it's really disrespectful, then I'll ask you to leave, or I'll leave. And I learned that the hard way through ratification. But those are my rules, and that's how we'll conduct today. But any question, I'm happy to answer any question you have, as long as it's respectful. So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about where we've been, talk about where we are, and talk about where we're going. And so why don't we start? So where have we been? So bargaining 22 to 25. We're a year out from the collective agreement expiring. During this last round of bargaining, we saw increases that we haven't seen before, between 25 and it's actually as high as 42% for some of our LPNs, which was fantastic. And we saw that through a general wage increase, premiums, ad pay, that sort of thing. We saw a wage schedule redesign. We did things a little bit differently. It didn't impact every single nurse in the same way. That was with intention. And the reason why we did that, the reason why your bargaining team did that, is because of the Me Too provision in the other, in our sister unions, with our sister unions. And if we had done it across the board, as opposed to the way that we did, that would have attracted the Me Too provision, because it would have been a general wage increase as opposed to a wage increase across many, many nurses, but not impacting everybody the same. And so that's why it was done that way. Premiums are pensionable. We saw business allowance, isolation travel allowances, and we saw the coverage of college fees, which we're very, very excited about. Great news, just not insurance this go around. We also saw flexibility, leave improvements, OHS, some more ED&P reps, and a commitment to DEI, which again was a step in the right direction. Minimum nurse-patient ratios. Again, first time it's happened, first time in Canada. Very, very exciting. We saw a commitment of $750 million, 200 in the first year, 250, and then 300 ongoing in terms of a ministry commitment. What's different about this is that it was a deal directly with the Ministry of Health, which is different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've negotiated directly with HEABC, the Health Employers Association of British Columbia. In this case, we negotiated directly with the Ministry of Health. They control the money, and they're the ones that had the power to enter into this negotiation, and so that's what we did. And all of this came before the bargaining committee as well as part of the bargaining package. The difference here from other places is that it's a top-down commitment, and so and I'll be saying this a fair bit, we have a seat at an executive level steering committee table. It's the first time that's happened. We've seen, and your president or vice president were here. They would certainly comment on it. Shalane, I welcome Shalane to comment on it because I think she's experienced this as well. It's the first time we've actually had a seat at the adult table, and we're making decisions with government. And we're impacting how government is making decisions, which is unique, it's different, and it represents a meaningful opportunity for BCNU, for nurses in this province. It is going to impact every single sector. It'll impact every single sector a little bit differently, but it will impact every single sector, and it's the first time in the world that we'll have ratios in long-term care and in community. I'm going to anticipate a question because it's been asked before, and I'm trying to attend every single region across the province. And the question is, long-term care and community, is that happening now, or is it going to happen at the very, very end? We're working on it now. We've got groups of nurses, and we're pulling in nurses who have expertise, who are subject matter experts in community and in long-term care to be doing the work now. The reality is it's never happened before, and so we don't have anything to work upon or from. So it will probably be inputted into the system last, but we're working on it now, and we're struggling through being the first in the world to do it.
Jim, what about daycare surgery?
Yeah, so I'm going to take questions at the end, if that's okay. So, and please write it down so you don't lose it. But it's going to impact every single sector in healthcare. Is the short answer. That's reality. We were unsuccessful. One of the things that were asked for was increased benefits. And so in bargaining, and a lot of people don't realize this, but in bargaining, I don't get a vote. The CEO does not get a vote. It is just the bargaining committee, 10 people who you elect, and are elected by our sister unions, or sister union, who sit at the table and actually negotiate with me and with your bargaining team, which includes staff. And it's only the bargaining team that votes. Bargaining committee, sorry, the 10 that are elected. One of the asks that we didn't get was benefits. And the reason why we didn't get benefits is because the Health Employers Association promised the other unions that we would be part of the Health Benefits Trust, and they did that many, many years ago. The answer when we were approaching the issue of increased benefits was join a Health Benefits Trust and you can see increased benefits. So instead, we negotiated directly with the Ministry of Health, and we obtained $60 million for a nurse support fund and $20 million for LPN bridging. The $20 million for the LPN bridging is active. We have applications in, and those monies are being delivered to eligible candidates. The nurse support fund has been held up. So the committee that was established with respect to the nurse support fund determined that they wanted to take 10% of that fund, so $6 million, and establish a hardship fund. That hardship fund we are receiving applications for the hardship fund under the criteria that's been shared. And I don't know what that is, but hopefully it's okay. And we're processing those applications. It's taking some time, but we're working through it. The remaining funds are for mental health support. So, as you know, nurses top out $900 for psychological help, which is a challenge. We had come up with a really excellent plan to put that in place, and that was we created an umbrella insurance policy above Pacific Blue Cross, your existing policy, and then Pacific Blue Cross was going to administer it. The challenge that we had, or that we have had, and we continue to have, is that we need access to the data. And so working with Sarah Hoffman, who's the CEO of BDC, Pacific Blue Cross, we understood that should be an easy situation. It is your data, it is your plan, and it's an existing plan. All we were doing was putting money and creating an umbrella policy above your plan so that they could administer that and then top up that benefit from $900 to up to $5,000 for nurses who are suffering. The challenge we've had is that HEABC and HBT have refused to allow us access to the data for that purpose. So we've had to go back to the drawing board, and we've had to work with BBC to come up with an alternative way of managing data that we have, which is incomplete for health insurance purposes. We're not a health insurer. And we've had to find a way to couple together our data and a way for members to self-register in order to access those funds. So we're working on that right now. I'm hoping that we'll have a better sense of timing shortly. It's frustrating, but it's a work in progress. And so that's why we've asked all nurses who have maxed out the $900, and we understand that somewhere between 12 and 1,400 nurses to keep their receipts, because we are going to go back to 2023 and make those nurses whole for that benefit as soon as it's in place. We have been focused on, and we continue to focus on building relationships that are beneficial to nurses in this province. Relationships with the government, relationships with labor and other unions, and internal relationships. Relationships between our staff, relationships between council, relationships between our staff on the operational side and council, and with the membership, with the regions, with our stewards, and with our members. It's critically important, and particularly with respect to our activists. We're looking to increase union activism. Engagement is critical. 40,526 nurses voted in connection with the last collective agreement during ratification. That's a record. 40,526. Fantastic. It's fantastic that many nurses came out and voted. And I remember being asked how I felt about whether it was going to be a yes vote or a no vote. It didn't matter. What mattered was that 40,526 nurses exercised their right to democracy and came out and voted one way or another. And that is a fantastic start and something that we need to build upon. That's critical as we move forward. We're having more regional events, more outreach, more walkabouts. We have our campaign officers in place who are throughout the province, engaging with our members, being relevant in terms of answering questions, directing people in the right direction, which is fantastic. We've got our 2 vans, which are also very, very helpful. And we're focusing on grassroots advocacy. More rallies than before, more campaigns, and again, we need to focus and be prepared for job action as we move forward. One of our regrets, speaking on behalf of the bargaining committee and on behalf of our staff, is that we didn't have a strike. It's abundantly clear to me that the membership needed to strike. It was abundantly clear as we moved through ratification that there was a level of anger that is unsurpassed, that the organization has never experienced before, that the members have never experienced before, all for very, very, very good reasons. The reality is that the bargaining committee, I don't know what that is, but the bargaining committee decided to not recommend job action, decided to recommend moving to ratification. And the reason for that was because the deal was as sweet as the deal was. The deal was as rich as the deal was. And for that reason, and that reason alone, the recommendation was to move forward to ratification. In retrospect, did the members need a strike? Maybe they did. Maybe you did. It certainly is a hard time, and I'm not going to blow any smoke on that. It's never been worse than it is right now in healthcare. We know that, and it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal out there for everybody for different reasons. And the level of anger continues to be very high. We know that. The other reality is we have to be prepared for job action as we move forward. Will there be job action this go around? No idea. No idea. I've also been asked, Jim, what are the priorities moving forward to bargaining? And the truth is, I don't know. I don't know. It's not up to me. It's not up to me, and it's not up to your bargaining committee. It's up to you. And so we are trying very, very hard to build upon the 40,526. We have almost 50,000 nurses in this province. And ideally, when we're getting information back about bargaining, and we will be asking for that, ideally every single nurse would give us information and tell us what is most important. Because it's your agreement. You know, the BCNU is you. It's not me. It's not a building in Burnaby. It's not your council. It's the membership. It is you. And so we need to hear from you in terms of what your priorities are. My role is simple. My role is to keep the bargaining committee on task and focusing on what the membership wants. That is the goal. And so when we come forward with the bargaining survey, please, 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 we need as many people as possible to respond. That's critical. When we are doing the conference, when we're doing the regional events, please, please, please participate. It's absolutely critical that we know what the membership wants, what your number one priority is, 2, 3, 4, 5, right down to your bottom priority, and what you'll strike over. It's important that we know that, and it's important that government knows that, and the health employers know that. We're focusing on building transparency. We're focusing on building transparency. We did some new stuff last time. We did some live streaming. We put some recordings behind the member portal until those were being misused, and then we had to take some of those down. I think, or maybe all of them, I can't remember what happened there, but people were taking them and cutting and pasting and making a mockery of what we were doing for their own purposes. So that was unfortunate, but the live streaming was effective. I think part of what we did in terms of transparency caused as many people to come out to vote as possible, as we had, the 40,526. We're focusing on staff support, we're focusing on steward support, member support, outreach, and DEI as we're moving forward. So these are all things that we've been doing and will continue to do. So where are we now? So this is being printed right now. I don't know if we know if we're any closer to hopefully we'll have it out soon. That'll be the color of it. The 150 positions are almost all in place. We've got our LPNs are now contributing to the 1% fund, and benefits is going to be a big issue as we move forward. There's still a very big push for us to join a health benefits trust. The challenge with the health benefits trust is that if it's well funded, it can be a very, very effective tool. A very, very effective tool. If it is not well funded or insufficiently funded at the beginning, and then is insufficiently funded as we move forward in time, we can find ourselves in a bit of a predicament. And there are other unions, other nurses unions that find themselves in those predicaments. One is New Brunswick, and New Brunswick has a benefits trust in place, and they've got to pay for their LTD. Unfortunately, their LTD costs have increased dramatically over the years. dramatically over the years. The net result has been that even though they've had 20 years of increasing wages, the net result for their members is that their members don't have any more money in their pockets because the LTD costs are so high, and they're on the hook for them. So there are big risks with respect to this, and we need to canvass the members and decide what we're going to do moving forward on benefits, but it's going to be a big ticket item. And that door was opened in earlier rounds of bargaining. We can try to close it this round, but we'll be canvassing members about benefits because it's going to be a very important issue. We are holding health authorities accountable with respect to their contractual obligations. We have meetings with senior health authority leadership all the time. Demand letters are going out regularly. We've got SCPDs, we've got active IWADs in play. This approach will continue. Being assertive will continue.
Can you explain what they are, Jim?
Yes. Can I explain what SCPD is? Single employer policy disputes and industry-wide grievances. So grievances that apply to the entire province, if the entire province is behaving badly and breaching our agreement, and grievances that are for a particular employer that are an alleged breach of policy. That's a single employer policy dispute. So what's happening? The reality for ratios is that it's a complex long-term project. When you look at Australia, when you look at California, they took years to develop ratios. Years and years to develop ratios. We're 1 year in. We're 1 year in. And what we found was that it took almost a year to work through the 1-to-4 ratio that was announced in MedSurg. MedSurg represents roughly 60% of the province in terms of healthcare. And as you know, it would be very, very easy for us to sit in a room with Ministry of Health and say, here's what they should be. Let's copy it here, copy it from there. You know, do what Australia has done, do what is happening here, do what's happening in New South Wales. But what the ministry needs to do is of course bring the health authorities along for the ride. You know, make sure that it's going to be viable. And we've had some real challenges, and the ministry has had some real challenges. And this is not making excuses for the ministry or the health authorities, not at all. But it's a complex process. When we were negotiating ratios, we were negotiating it from the perspective that we would start with a 10,000 bed count. And so the bed count to the census was 9,200 and change before. What the ministry realized and the health employers realized is that the system was regularly in surge level 1, which is around 10,000. And would, of course, at different times go into different levels of surge. Surge 4 is when they empty the Tim Hortons and they fill that full of beds. It's the worst case scenario that we'll find if there's a really brutal situation in the province, God forbid. But, and so what they decided was that they were going to fund the bed count to start at 10,000. Take surge level 1, increase the bed count in the province to 10,000. And then engage with the health authorities to figure out how many beds they have. What they realized and what they have realized as we've been moving forward is the information from the health authorities to the Ministry of Health is not accurate. And so they received all of these numbers from their health authorities. This is how many beds we have. This is and this is what you've been funding. And then when the Ministry of Health went on the ground to check and see how many beds were actually there, they were wrong. They were mistaken and they were wrong. So they realized that they actually had to go back and force a recount and then test the numbers that were coming in. That has been an ongoing issue in terms of information the ministry was going to be relying upon. So that continues to be a challenge for us. The reality for us is that as we move forward, and when you look at California, where they've had ratios for 20 years, it continues to be a struggle for their union to make sure that ratios are followed. This will be no different here. It will be no different here. We won't be able to rely upon the information from the health authorities. That is, we've been there, done that. A, they won't give it to us. B, when they do give information, it is not always accurate. So there's a challenge, therein lies a challenge, and so we need to control that information. And so we'll be asking for members, as we're moving forward in this journey, we'll be asking for members to share information with us. We'll be reaching out to members to share information with us. We've already asked for members to put their names forward if they're interested in helping us with ratios. We've got 1,300 members so far who have put their hands up and said, yes, we will. So we're engaging with those members regularly. And Shalane can share with you a QR code I think we've got, or get in touch with Shalane if you have an interest in in helping us with ratios. We need as many nurses as possible, because as we go through this journey, we'll be reaching out to test the information that you receive. I think we'll be using technology as well to our best ability to find out whether we're at ratio, to find out whether we're not, because we can't trust the health authorities. That is our reality. We've got key working groups as part of ratios: a planning group, an implementation group, monitoring and evaluation, recruitment and retention, and communications as part of that as well. We sit on every single one of those committees, and those committees are great. But at the end of the day, the most important one is the executive steering committee. I sit on that. We've got, who else is on there? Adrian is on that. Tristan is on that. So your president, your vice president, Deb Charwa is on that. Michael Barraclough is on that. Director of PPA, professional practice. And what we've seen time and time again is that we have influence at that table. And again, that is a wonderful thing, because when things start going sideways, we can say at that table, we think this needs to happen. And most of the time, in fact, I can't think of a time so far over the last year when our direction is not followed. And I'll give you an example. So on March 1st, there was an announcement, and that announcement was supposed to only be in respect of med-surg. So the med-surg announcement was 4-to-1, 24/7. So 1 nurse, 4 patients in med-surg, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are the first and the only jurisdiction in the world that has that ratio. No other jurisdiction in the world has that ratio. So that's first, and that's exciting. But the ministry was only going to announce that. They weren't going to announce anything else. And there was a bunch of money that they were considering. They weren't going to announce that. And we went back to the ministry and said, listen, this is taking a long time. And if all we have to announce is med-surg, it's not enough. We need more. It's taken too long. And we started out at 4-to-1 at the very beginning of this journey. And if you look at the original document that was signed in April of last year, that was approved by your bargaining committee, it's there. The 4-to-1 is there, along with a whole bunch of other ratios. So what we said was we cannot have the other aspects of healthcare take this long. The health authorities took forever in terms of testing the numbers and looking at the numbers and figuring out how to do it and running it by their managers, and it just, whatever they were doing, it took forever. And so we went back to ministry and we said at the executive steering committee, we need more need, take a chance. Let's we're not asking you to behave stupidly or irresponsibly. We're saying commit. And the process is an organic process. It's a circular process where we're going to monitor and evaluate and reevaluate. So if we get it wrong, we can fix it. But take a position. And they did. And so what was announced on March 1st was far more than just that one area. There were a number of areas that were announced. And some monies were announced as well. And we were very happy about that. Because we just got to do it. We need to recognize, which is a theme that I'll talk about more. We need to be prepared to make mistakes. We need to do things differently. We need to try things and commit to things and give it a shot, knowing that if we get it wrong, we'll try to fix it as we move forward. It's a phased approach with continuous feedback, and we need member participation. Those 1,300 nurses who signed up, thank goodness for them. We need more nurses. We're going to need people on the ground as nurses start coming, as we start getting to a place where we've got more nurses on the ground and we can reach our ratio targets, because we need that feedback. We're going to need that feedback for sure. So here's what was announced. Med-surg, 4-to-1, 24/7, 365. First time ever. Palliative, 1-3, rehab, 1-5, and 1-7 at night. And you can see the others there. We've got focus groups focusing on all those other areas. We had hoped to announce ER, but we realized as soon as we looked at ER, it's complicated. It's way more complicated than I thought. Not being a nurse and not being an ER nurse in particular, when we talked to our ER nurses, we realized that across the province, this is a complicated piece, a very, very, very complicated piece. So we slowed down on the ER, and we've got a working group working on ER. And again, we're working at the same time on ALC, maternity, long-term care, community, rural, remote. And there are areas of nursing and areas of healthcare that I've never heard of. And so we're hearing about that, and we're realizing that this will be an ongoing piece of work that is requiring a lot of time and a lot of effort, and we're trying to get it right. So where are we going? This is a year of focus for BCNU. And it has to be a year of focus. We have lots and lots of challenges, and your council, your board, is appreciating that, and is taking the opportunity to address those challenges, to understand what the challenges are, to address them, and to start doing things differently. The same is happening with the leadership team on the operations side, the staff side. We're looking at problems we have, we're realizing the shortcomings that we have as an organization, we're realizing we, for many years, have not been supporting our stewards the way that our stewards need to be supported. And your council's making decisions, and they're governing, and they're coming together strongly as a team, which is a beautiful thing. New council as of September. And the same is happening on the staff side. We're focusing very, very hard on what this organization is and what this organization needs to be to better serve the members. That is what we're doing, right across the board. And Shalane, I'm happy for you to ask her any questions about her experience in that regard. But it's a real year of focus for us. Historically, we've been missed. And I love fireworks. Fireworks are some of my favorite things in the world. It makes my life partner crazy when I come home with a box full of fireworks when we had young kids and no money. But we've always enjoyed them very, very much. But fireworks are a big flash in the sky, a big, ooh, God, oh, isn't that fantastic and lovely? And I enjoy it and I soak it up, and then they're gone, and they're a memory. And that's been a lot of what this organization has done. We've done some great work, and I do not want to take away from the great work we've done over the years. Some fantastic work. But it's been a lot of fireworks where we've had a big event. Revalanche is an example. Massive undertaking. Really, well placed in terms of trying to generate some change, but it was change at a point in time and at a moment in time. And when you look at the long-term impact of Revalanche, there was no long-term impact. There was not. It was a short point in time, resulted in the payment of many millions of dollars in damages, but that's it. Now, was it well placed? I think it was well placed. Did it make sense at the time? I think it made sense at the time. Did it tax the resources in our organization to a point of exhaustion for many? Yes, it did. Was it well placed in terms of having long-term impact? No, it was not. It was not. But that's what it was. We're looking to do things differently, to establish structures, to establish an approach that is going to do things differently long-term, so that it's not a firework, a flash in the sky. It's something that will have long-term impact and long-term change. We're setting priorities. Council was together for a couple of days to do that. We've been an organization for the past while, it's hard to say how long, that has been trying to do everything. And in trying to do everything, it means you don't do anything really, really, really well. We haven't established key priorities, and we need to. And your council is doing that. Your council is focusing on key priorities to get us going in the right direction. We need to focus on trust and transparency, engagement, activism, and building solidarity. And the reason why we need to do that is because when we function together, we are strong. The union is you. And when the union functions together and supports each other, we are strong. When we're allowed to be divided by the employer, when we divide ourselves in conflict, we are not. We are not. Whether it happens at council, whether it happens with our staff, whether it happens between council and staff, whether it happens in the region, in the membership, when we are divided, we are not as strong as we are when we act in solidarity and we're together and we have each other's backs. That is what is critical, and that's what we need to do. This is just a little aid memoir for myself in terms of our staff. And so our staff is comprised of a great number of incredible people, absolutely incredible people, who choose to work for nurses in this province. Trade unionism is on the rise. It's on the rise in the US, it's on the rise in Canada, and that's going to continue. Our staff could get a job anywhere. Anywhere. Every single one of them could get a job anywhere. They choose to work here. And there's no conflict. When a manager says to you, oh, you know what, go and talk to the union about that. That's a union issue. What I would hope could happen going forward is that every member who has that said to them could say, I am the union. The union is me, and the union is everybody here. And so, no, don't try to divide. That is a tool in the employer toolbox. Don't let it work. Don't let it work. It's not the staff's fault. The staff nobody's perfect, and the standard is not perfection. The standard is doing our very, very best all the time. And as long as we're trying to be the strongest nurses union in the world, and we're trying to benefit our members, that's it. That is the goal. That is important. So please don't go to a place of being negative. Human nature trends to the negative. That is our reality. When you hear somebody talking about, oh my God, did you hear about Susie and who Susie's sleeping with? I got to tell you this. Everyone's ears up. Oh my God, well, I got to hear this. Tell us the dirt. God, I love the dirt. Let's hear the negativity. As opposed to really focusing on the positive, focusing on the compassionate, focusing on the future, and realizing that everybody needs to work together to be better and to be stronger. That is where we need to be. And so please don't let the employer pit you against the staff or you against a coworker. We need to be better than that and stronger than that. We need to reflect as an organization, and your board is reflecting on these things. Where do we fit vis-a-vis labor and other unions, the health employers, government, political, and the societal environment? Where do we fit? What are we, and what do we need to be? What have we been? Doesn't matter. What do we need to be going forward? That's the critical question. Our contract expires 1 year as of March 31st. We need more member involvement. We need to gather more information. We're going to do things differently. Last round was a unique round. I came into it in January of 2022, and we were not prepared. The reality is that we were not prepared. Work wasn't done to gather information appropriately. We had to do it very, very quickly. Unfortunately, there wasn't an effort to ensure that council was on side and moved forward in that process because things happened so quickly. That was a mistake. We were rushed at the tail end, even though what was on the table was a great deal, a record amount of money. We were rushed. And we were rushed because some of that money, the $108.5 million, was a consideration and hung on the balance with $100 million from government, which was year-end money. And year-end money in government has to be used, has to be applied by year-end, otherwise it rolls back into general revenue. And if that happens, it's lost, and that's just how it is. So we needed an answer within a defined period of time, which meant that we had to go quickly through the ratification process. And that was a mistake. It was too fast. We had members who were turning to social media for information, which is not accurate and is highly unfortunate. We had members coming forward after the fact and saying, listen, I voted no, but now I understand it a little bit better. I've had more time with it. Can I change my vote? The answer was no, you can't. Sorry, you voted and you've exercised your right. That's done. If we could have slowed it down, that would have been a smarter thing to do. We couldn't because we didn't want to lose that money. It's a lot of money, and we didn't want to lose that. In this next round, I'm hoping that we can do things differently. But we need information from people, and the information gathering is going to be critically important. Before I get here, I want to tell a quick story because it's kind of a funny story, and I want to talk about power. Power together is our reality. When we're together, when we have each other's backs, we are powerful. There's no doubt about that. We currently enjoy an 82% approval rate with the public. It has never been that high. That is the highest that we've ever measured. We need to get that to a higher level, and everything that we're doing is working on that, and we're going in the right direction. If you think you don't have power, listen to this story. Adrian Dix, I was, and I'm trying not to swear. I'm trying as hard as I can not to swear. Although I just read a report that was sent to me by a member that said that people who swear are actually, it's a sign of intelligence. Even though I've been told by many, many people that it's not a sign of intelligence at all, including my life partner, and I should be choosing my words more carefully. But I get excited and I'm passionate, and so I do tend to swear. I'm going to swear, and this is the truth, based on the conversation that I had with Steve Brown, who's the deputy minister, who is the most senior level employee in the Ministry of Health. So we've got these vans, right? The vans that are coated in the berry color, and they're all over the province, which is fantastic, helping with rallies. And I get a call from Steve Brown, and Steve is a bit of a busy guy because he is the most senior employee in the Ministry of Health, and he deals with everything to do with health. And he called me up one afternoon and said, Jim, are you fucking with Stephen? Are you fucking with Adrian Dix? And I said, I'm Stephen. No, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I said, well, he said, Adrian just pulled into Prince George.
Fort McDonald.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Adrian, but thank you for cueing me because I always forget the community. Adrian is in Prince George and he's checking into his hotel. And parked right at the front is one of your vans. And he called me and he said, they're fucking with me, Stephen. You know, they're totally fucking with me. And so Stephen said, Jim, are you doing that? I said, I don't know. I'm not sure, Stephen. Let me give you a call back and let me look into this. Hung up the phone. And that shows how old I am. Hung up the phone. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, please let us be fucking with the Minister of Health. Please. I don't know who did it, but I fantastic. Made a couple of phone calls, and no, we're not. Somebody was driving the van up to Fort St. John. I always forget that community. It's an awesome community, but I forget that that's the one that they were driving to. They stopped in Prince George to rest because it's too long a drive. It just happened to be there. But the van alone, nobody in it, nobody around it, no placards, no loudspeakers, nothing. Just a van caused the Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, to call his most senior employee, who is really busy, and demanded that he call me and find out what's going on and tell me to stop it. It's a van. It's just a van. Now imagine that van surrounded by all of you, with placards, with loudspeakers, positioned strategically, having media present to see what's going on. How would that feel for the Minister of Health and for the Premier? Just the fact that we had a van parked by the front of our hotel. You have power. You have power. There's no doubt in my mind about that. We're now thinking we don't have a collective vision. We don't know where we're going. What's the point? Then we're going in circles. Or we don't know if we're going in circles. So we need to establish that. And this is the vision of your council. To build the strongest nurses union in the world. The strongest nurses union in the world. We can only do that together. We can only do that together. And this is very, very helpful because when looking at how we're spending money, when looking at how we're making decisions, every decision that we make can be measured against this. Does this expenditure of money, does this hire, does this fire, does this position, does this direction, does it help us get here? If the answer is no, then why are we doing it? If the answer is yes, let's do it. Let's do it together. That's the vision. And what does it mean? It means we have to have dialogue on hard topics and on governance topics. And this is what your council's doing. Who are we? What are our top priorities? What's our position on various issues? Who are we going to fight with? And how militant are we going to be? And so let me ask you this, and just by some avoidance, do we need to be more militant and stronger against the health authorities? What do you think?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there any more coffee in this room? That was pathetic. I love you. I love what you do. But do we need to be more strong and more militant against the health employers?
Well, what does
Yeah.
militant,
Yes.
what does militant mean?
Oh, you're scared of the word militant.
Yes.
Militant means that we're
Not
prepared.
scared, I'm
Militant
serious.
means that we're prepared to go and shut intersections down in downtown Vancouver to make a point. We're prepared to shut downtown Vancouver down for half an hour, 45 minutes, to make a point and to ensure that the health employers understand that we mean ball. We are
I'm
serious.
not afraid of militant, I'm just curious of what it's actually.
Yeah, it means
and what that means.
strong-minded. It means more assertive. It means more aggressive in our approach. And so, do we need to be more strong-minded?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Really, like how strong-minded?
Big.
Let me hear it. What does it sound like if you're really being strong-minded? Come on now. How strong-minded are we going to be? Come on. What does loud mean? Show me loud.
I think
Are we
we
gonna-
need to pick our battles
Yeah.
and make them count.
Yes.
And that's where the militancy will be successful.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. But what does it sound like? Are you going to do it?
Loud! Story, where's Story?
Can I hear it? Why don't we just say yes? Can we be stronger minded? Can we be more assertive with the health employers?
Yes!
Thank goodness. Thank you.
I mean, we're gonna shut down Baker Street. Like, we're not gonna go, like, here, let's shut down Baker Street,
What-
that intersection.
And what is
And
Baker Street? Is it a main?
then also, it would cause chaos. You know,
So we get attention.
Yeah.
So I want to tell another very quick story. So convention last year, a decision was made that we were going to shut down downtown Vancouver. We're going to shut down Georgia and Burrard, which is the biggest intersection in downtown Vancouver. And when that decision was being made by your council and by our activists, a lot of people came up to me and said, "Jim, are you sure this is the right thing to do? What if people are mad? What if people are angry? What if people are not supportive? What is it dangerous? Is there a chance we're going to get hurt? Is there a chance that people are not going to like us? Is there a chance it's going to negatively impact our relationship with the public?" And they were all perfect questions. Perfect questions. Who was there? Anybody there? Yeah. What happened?
Oh, I had people come up to me on the street and say, it's about downtime.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
The reality for us is, thank you for saying that. The reality for us is there was one person, and he was a drunken asshole, young man, who was being belligerent because he was highly, highly intoxicated. And then when he realized who he was being belligerent to, he later came up and said sorry. He said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." People joined in. They wanted to march with me. People were honking their horns in support. We had them held up for 45 minutes downtown. People get angry downtown at me if I'm not paying attention to the light changing and are on their horn in an angry way and giving me fingers and stuff. But people were 100% behind you. 100% behind you. Further evidence that you have power and support. Further evidence that you have power and support. We're seeking dialogue and feedback from everybody, and we're trying to be as transparent as we can be, which includes this. It includes the town halls, it includes giving opportunities to ask questions, hard ones, easy ones, everything in between, and answering those. And it includes doing that with everyone, council, the executive, directors, managers, staff, activists, and all of our members. It's critically important. And it's critically important that we remember what a union is. What a union is. And that we remember that unions originated to give people life. Literally, to give people life. To give them lives. To ensure that they had food to feed their families. To ensure that their children did not work in mills where they would lose appendages and die. To ensure that people wouldn't be beaten for basic human rights and wouldn't be abused and wouldn't be killed. People have been beaten and abused right up until not that many years ago in the U.S. Not that many years ago in the U.S. There's a pig farm out east in the U.S. And as late as the early 2000s, people were being beaten for organizing a union. You're not being beaten physically. You're being beaten psychologically. The fact that 82% of nurses say their mental health is suffering is abuse. End stop. So if you're ever wondering, is the union, which is you, is it relevant? Is it important? It is. It is. Because employers will continue this behavior unless we come together and stop it. Unless we come together and stop it. Your council decided to not fight with government right now, to fight with the health employers. But keep an eye on government. If government is prepared to work with us, to invite us to tables, to participate actively with us, and to give us voice, we will work with government. If that changes, we will change. It does not mean that we have blind trust in government or anyone in government. It does not mean that at all. It means if you will work with us, we will work with you. If you will provide us funds to support nurses in this province, we will work with you. It's that simple. But if that changes, then we will change. And we need to keep an eye on government and make sure that that is the case, and that that relationship is serving this organization and nurses well. If it is not, then we will change that relationship. We need we're engaging in coaching with our senior leadership. We're engaging in education in a different way internally. We're focusing on recognition, retention, feedback, role clarity, goal setting, professional development, education, and generally team building. When we're stronger as a team, we're stronger together, and we're focusing on that. We need to communicate better. We know that. And we're trying to do that. How many, show of hands for the stewards in the room? Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your service to the organization and to each other. Ideally, at some point in the future, if I'm asking that question, I'd like everyone's hand to go up. Because if everybody was a steward and learned enough to be able to call yourself a steward, then everybody could turn to everybody else for support. And that would be a fantastic thing. That would be a fantastic thing. So we're trying to communicate better internally. We're trying to communicate with our stewards before we communicate with the members. We don't want to set you up for failure. We want to give you information, as soon as we can. We want to do the same with our staff so the questions can be answered. We're trying to communicate appropriately externally and internally. And we realize that we have to have control of information. I know that apps have been talked about in the past. I know that the website has been talked about in the past. Your council's taking steps and actually allocating funds by way of the last budget to ensure that we have budget to do those things. We had to start dealing with some of our hardware at the building on Regent Street because the hardware was outdated and didn't support any of the work that we want to do. But we need to control the information, and that comes from your involvement. Be brave and do things differently. We need to do that. We need to be prepared to be different, to ask and to hear and to understand what we're doing well. But more importantly, what are we not doing well and what do we need to do? What is the union supposed to be as we move forward? We need to listen and we need to be prepared to do it differently and revisit and not feel like we have to hold on to the past. We can be different and we can do things differently together. We're hoping that members will understand the value of the contract, basic contract language, their role and their rights. Again, easy words to put on a screen, but this is important stuff. And looking back at the role of the union, unions were built around dinner tables. Unions weren't built in big halls. They weren't built in meetings as big as this. It's about one-to-one. It's about helping somebody who doesn't understand what their rights are. It's about helping people understand that the union is relevant. It is them. It is everyone. And not just when you're in trouble with the employer. Not just then. Long before then. The contract is your contract. And you need to understand it because it applies to you. You won't know it's being breached otherwise. Walking the talk, trying to build hope, trust, and confidence through action. That's what we're hoping to do as we're moving forward. And engaging. Member engagement has to be ultimately the sole purpose of BCNU and engaging in every single way because it's about supporting people to help each other. And we can't do that without engaging in a very meaningful way. And the union, again, that's you, needs to engage with other members. Members who say, I don't care about the union. It doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. It doesn't until they're in trouble, until they are negatively impacted. But people shouldn't wait for that. People should get involved and understand that collectivity and solidarity are not just fancy words that hang out there at the BCNU office in Burnaby. They're an approach to existence and an approach to exercising power. And it's everyone's role, staff, council, activists, and engaging with government. And that engagement has to be elbow to elbow and face to face. We can't hide in an office. We can't hide on Zoom. We need to be engaging with people and connecting with people and doing it elbow to elbow and face to face. That is the most effective way of engaging with people and being human. And that's what we need to be doing more of. and really focusing on the strength and solidarity. And we are one team, council, staff, regional folks, membership, you know, individuals who are being disciplined, individuals who are not. We are one team at the end of the day. And I have yet to meet a member, and I have yet to meet a staff person in our union. I have yet to meet an elected person in this union who are bad people. I haven't met them yet. Not yet. I'm sure people are out there, you know, but I have not met them. And we all need to reflect in that way. Like, are any of these folks bad people? Not yet. Not yet. Is everyone trying to do their best for the membership and for the organization and for their team? I believe so. I believe so. Are there different interests at play? Sometimes there are. Is that bad? No, it's never bad. Never bad at all. Never bad at all. If people are respectful and they pause and they reflect, hey, is this a bad person or is this just somebody who has a different point of view than me? It's not, don't make it about the person, make it about the issue. You can disagree. We need to be one team. We need to be one team and take that moment when you're having an interaction and pause and decide whether you want to view that human being as a human being or as the issue. The issue is never the human. It's not. We're one team. Members, activists, council, staff. That's BCNU. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And Shirley, I'll help. And just go ahead.
My name is Jacqueline. I live in Castle, which is an hour and a half from here. We're quite rural, and we're a unique facility. We have a primary health in the basement. We have an active emergency that is open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We're an hour from the nearest hospital. I work in long-term care, and around the patient ratios, nurse-patient ratios, I'll be curious to see what comes up, because we have 18 permanent beds, 1 respite, 1 palliative. Sometimes you might have 3 palliative in long-term care at the same time as the active palliative, and maybe the respite's filled with palliative or a subacute. It's a mix all the time. There's a lot of fluidity in those beds.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be really curious to see what you come up with those rural unique sites.
Me too.
So that was a comment.
Yeah.
But I drove here tonight mostly to say to you, Jim, thank you for the best contract I've ever had.
That's kind of you to say that. Thank
I'm
you.
serious.
Thank you.
I came from HEABC. I was actually a member on the privileged executive there for 7 years. I came to BCNU in Kicking Spring 12 years ago. BCNU made a promise to LPNs, and they kept that promise. So I want to say thank you to BCNU for that. When I went to bargaining last time and you were the interim CEO, you said one word that really had me excited, and it was grassroots. Because I never felt that BCNU had grassroots. I felt they were more of a business organization.
Yeah.
And that really bothered me because HU was grassroots.
Yeah.
We were out pounding the pavement when we needed to.
Yeah.
It cost us 15% at one time, you know, the kicking and screaming and everything else, so I wouldn't have done anything different.
Yeah.
So, coming over here to BCNU, I'm proud to be a BCNU member, I really am. And I love the direction that the union is going. Because the union, whole organization is nothing without the members. Nothing. There's not going to be union dues, there's not going to be anything.
Yeah.
So you have to engage the members. We don't have enough funds. You know, this last round of bargaining, there's a lot of us nurses that are pretty close to retirement. We're fighting for our best 5 years. Actually, it's probably one of my first and my best 5 years.
Good.
But it actually is going to keep me hanging on for 4 years, just like I'm bargaining forward. So you did good that way, because I really believe that you're going to keep a few more nurses in the system. But we need to have a little bit more fun. Everybody is tired. There's so many of us that are tired. And I stay engaged. I don't steward because of, just because I did so many years of that. And I had some personal stuff I had to take care of at home. But I still want to be involved, I still want to be a voice. I participate as much as I can, and I want to know where we're going as an organization, because I'm the person in my site, we don't have an access to it, but I'm the person that helps and organizes and passes information, and I want everybody to get involved, and it bothers me that nobody wants to. Right? Maybe we can have a little bit more fun, and there's a different, approach the union takes in doing that. Maybe we're gonna get members that haven't been active more active. You know, I don't know. Anyways, those were a few comments. I talked
I think it's
about
good
the
feedback.
minimum nurse to patient ratios. I wanted you to explain the LPN 1% fund. That was a big thing of mine coming over to BCNU, that I really wanted us to be part of, and I was so glad that it came forward in the last round. I was, I've been bugging everybody for years about it, but I wanted to hear more about it, what it's gonna look like for us.
Yeah, so, do you wanna speak first, then I'll.
Yeah, I was just
second.
gonna talk about the minimum nurse-patient ratios, cause I think, your comment is one that has come up before, and it is, when we're looking at rural healthcare, it is unique. And so, I think it was on one of the slides, but, so I sit on the planning and implementation working group, which I'm so thankful to do, and then there's also now a rural and remote sort of task force that's tasked with sort of applying that lens to these different things. And so when you look at, you've got acute care, you've got palliative, you've got rehab beds, the idea is not that the employer gets to now say, oh, well, we have 2 palliative beds and this many acute care beds and this many rehab beds, so we're gonna average that out. So it's meant to be whatever the bulk, whatever that unit is designated as, that should be what the ratio is. We have discussed how does palliative look in long-term care, because that is a significant workload issue, right? And there's a lot of resources needed there. And we're not there yet, but it's being looked at. And these rural sites that are sort of combined as everything, I am very, very well aware of those issues, as are many of the other people. Yeah, sitting on those committees, because what we don't want the employer doing is saying, well, that nurse in Emerge can help out, so you don't really need another nurse there, and that's exactly what they do. And so looking at what is your ability to access other resources, how far are you, can you even get transportation to your closest hospital if the road, from Castlegar is closed, like looking at those really unique factors, so you have strong voices sitting on those committees that are bringing those things forward. And I'm not just saying myself, there are lots of other folks who are really bringing that context there. So we got you.
Great.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your opening comments too. That was very, very kind of you to take that time to share those thoughts. So thank you for that. In terms of the fun, let me talk about that, because I'm only going to stay in this job as long as it's fun. And that's life's too short, and that's my truth. So, and I think you're right. I think we need to have more fun. I think we also need to recognize that there's not a legal solution for every problem that we have that is a serious problem. And I think that what you're going to see moving forward is council embracing that notion. And in fact, I know they're embracing that notion. And that means that we need to do things differently. And maybe there's not a legal solution to something, but if it's a serious enough problem, then we should take to the streets on it. We should be more assertive. We should be out there. We should help the employers appreciate that this is not working for us, and have the public on side and engage in our networks to cause there to be change in a different way, and to have fun doing that.
Yeah.
That kind of engagement is fun. There's an energy about it. For all of those folks who were involved in the rally in downtown Vancouver convention, it feels good to be a part of that. Like there's a camaraderie, a sense of solidarity that you feel inside when that's happening, and it's fun, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. Likewise when we did the Nurses Week, when we had the vigil in Victoria as opposed to a celebration, and all of those members of the legislature came out and were with us during that. The power of that is palpable. It's incredible. So I think we need to have open minds, and we need to have fun, and not forget that we can do this work and we can make it fun. And it's serious stuff, but let's have some fun doing it. I really appreciate that feedback. Want to comment on that at all, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great grievance meeting this week, and Deb and Corey were there, and I was like, that was fun. You know, like going into it feeling, you know, that you have the knowledge and you have the power, and you can have those hard conversations, and it was fun. I texted Corey, I was like, that was fun. I miss that. Like, I miss that feeling of going in there together and just having a position. And, you know, I know in the region we are trying to move more towards that. We've tried that for a while, right? More dinner meetings, more small venues where you're getting together, you have that community again. And I think, you know, Jim is really supportive of that. I think council is supportive of that. I sit on, one of the committees I sit on as chair is the MESSER chair, the member engagement, steward, recruitment, and retention. And that's one of the things we're looking at is like, how do we engage differently? What can we do? How can we, you know, we have policy and things we have to follow, but we need to do it differently. Our membership has changed, the needs have changed, and so if you have ideas what that looks like, that's super helpful for us, but we're looking to have more flexibility around how we can engage and what we can do, so it is more fun, it is a community. You know, I think we've missed that as a union, and looking at how do we engage within our nursing community, but also with our community as a whole, right? Like, why aren't we out there with families? Let's have a family picnic. Let's do some things that bring us together.
And you know, it was even like, for 4 years I sat at policy tables with Ministry of Health, HEABC, with HE. We had fun. They all loved coming to the policy table. We developed relationships because we got the business done, but we still had fun. We still had fun.
We had fun during bargaining. I mean, it was a grind, but it was.
Yeah, it was fun.
Did have fun. Yeah.
We worked too hard, so
Yeah.
you know the extracurricular activities that we all take on, we need to have fun while we're doing it.
The last thing you raised was the 1% issue, and what that looks like and what that means. And before we come to you, sorry, Corinne. The short answer about what that's going to look like to the LPNs is I don't know. There's a retiree benefits committee that is struck. What last I heard about that is that they're turning their mind to governance. And what I think that means, and please don't hold me to it because I don't formally sit on that committee. That's a committee that was struck some time ago. What I think that means is that they're likely going to change. Take a look at the governance of that committee and ensure that there's some representation from LPNs. So it's not, because right now there are no LPNs on that committee. And it doesn't, I wouldn't think that they would feel right making decisions about LPNs without there being LPN voices on the committee. That would be my hope. And that's certainly something that I would be saying to them, and something I have said actually. So I understand this meeting's coming up, and I expect that that's what they'll be talking about. Yeah, and so I don't have an answer to that right now. Corinne?
Oh, hi. Thanks for letting me be here.
Of course. You're a member.
So my question is, and you can choose to just maybe answer me privately after if you prefer, or we can do it here. Update on the arbitration. So I've actually got, I find it interesting, the transparency concept, because I've got in my receipt emails from BCNU employees where nurses have asked for updates on this arbitration, and the employees have actually forwarded them to our group because we seem to have more information than the union to give to nurses. So I was wondering if you would mind giving us the updates so we can inform these nurses what happened with the arbitration and what the plan is coming forward.
Mm-hmm. So I typically when things are in arbitration, we don't comment publicly on them. That is not an uncommon approach because they're before an arbitrator. Like when things are before a judge, the judges frown and arbitrators tend to frown on things being dealt with in the public eye when they're currently and actively before an arbitrator or decision maker.
Is the process complete, or are you still looking that you're going to have to schedule more dates for it?
What my understanding is that the process is not complete.
Okay.
That it is an ongoing process. And I am not, forgive me, but I am not actively involved in the arbitration itself. I'm focused on many different things. Deb, I'm not sure if you.
No, it's not finished yet, and as you know, there are some very serious questions to get answers to. A lot of the human rights issues. That would take a lot of time still to do those arguments and put them forward, right? And replies and that. So we've stuck in, but it's still.
So what does the process look like? So has one side already inputted all their evidence, or has that even started yet?
Yeah, so I don't know how much I can say really, because it's before.
Not much.
Yeah. So I can just tell you that we're in there, and it's going forward. And as soon as we can't say anything, we will. And I've made that promise as well. So as soon as I can, like if there's a decision or there's something to report out that would be meaningful, I will do that to all of the members.
And we're not the only union that is faced that. I just was in a meeting with at CFNU, the Canadian Federation of Nurses Unions, with the presidents from all of those groups. There was a very serious case in Ontario that wrapped up not too long ago. And they really wanted to communicate to the members and share with the members the submissions that they made, because there were some allegations against the union that you're not fighting hard enough. Like you're not, there's a black hole when you're in arbitration, which often happens in the context of court as well, particularly when you're dealing with a larger number of people who all can't attend and participate in the process. And so the Ontario nurses had a real challenge with that, and felt between a rock and a hard place in terms of not being able to share the information. What they ended up doing was something that I thought was pretty unprecedented and pretty cool, is that once the issue was finally dealt with and all the submissions had ended, and I don't know if a decision was rendered or not, but they shared the submissions with the members, and I'd never seen that done before. I thought that was really interesting, so that their membership, after the fact, could see exactly what was argued, and they shared the written submissions, which were very forceful, very assertive. And I think what I heard from their president, who's a fantastic person, really nice person, and hardcore, what I heard was that really benefited the relationship between those members that were impacted in the union, because those members were actually able to see, hey, you know what the union was saying was actually true. They were fighting a hard fight, and they did represent our interests well. So I think that's a unique and interesting approach, and it's something that I've talked to Deb about, and I'm interested in considering that as we move forward for transparency purposes. Sometimes it's hard to do it in the moment, particularly when there's an active arbitration. Yes.
I've got a couple questions. I'll just start with this one. So in regards to the ratios, just wondering if, I know it was kind of discussed during bargaining, the idea of like a float premium, working in a unit that gets floated so often that we have like a float list. Just wondering if there's any consideration of having a premium when you're going to other floors, because it does cause significant amount of anxiety. I know a nurse is a nurse leader, but I am like the worst medical surgical nurse that you've ever met. So disorganized, like not good at it.
Got it, okay.
So, you're driving into work, you're like, oh my God, is it coming off of a float list? You see sick time going up. So if they're implementing these ratios before we have the staff to complement it, and they're just gonna like find out, if we're under census or, we're doubling up. Just like if you were compensated, if it was like, if they've called out for a sick call or a vacancy, they're probably willing to go to overtime, which is double time. So if you're floated, with sort of difference of having a bit of competition there.
Yeah. So you're talking about redeployment.
Yeah, redeployment.
Yeah. So and a premium for redeployment. So here's a challenge with premiums for things like that. If you and it's kind of like PCAP was in terms of the $3 and the $5 an hour. If you establish, and this is just strategy, and this is up to the nurses, this is up to the union, you guys, as we're preparing for the next round of bargaining. If that's something that is really important, then let's make it a bargaining priority. The challenge with doing it is, what is the amount? And we establish an amount and we say, hey, that's worth $6.50 an hour. Then the employer gets to say, well, they put a price on it. And so we are going to then use it because they've given us permission by giving it a price. And is it worth that to us? Darn right it is. $6.50 an hour, 100%. She's a fantastic nurse. Let's take her to wherever, doesn't matter, and we can do it because we're paying for it. So it now becomes a management right under the contract. So that's a risk. In answer to your question right now, there has been consideration about that kind of a premium. There's two things I'll say. One is very recently, and in connection with the numbers that were announced on March 1st, the funding numbers which was part of the $200 and $250 million that was spent. We talked about that with government. We said that this is a concern. What about this kind of a premium to recognize the fact that it continues to happen in the healthcare system, and it sucks for nurses and it sucks for nursing teams, and we'd like to come up with a premium that would hurt the employer and cause them to not want to do that. And the answer back was no. They weren't prepared to discuss that. They said that's a bargaining issue and they're not prepared to go there. The other thing that I will say is that we have talked at the steering committee level about the fear that we have, and it's a legitimate one, that the employers are going to screw around and they are going to take from the rich units who have proper staffing and give to the poor units who don't. And we've been very clear with them that we would not support that whatsoever. Just like we will not support, and we have their agreement from the ministry that they won't do that. And that is that if you are over ratio, they won't change that. If you're in a unit that's functioning over ratio, so you actually have fewer patients in this, say you're functioning at 3 to 1 as opposed to 4 to 1 in a med surge at a particular location, it's like that for a reason. And that they won't take away from that is what we've been told, and is what the agreement is. Is there anything else that?
Yeah, this hold and evaluate principle, so keeping staffing levels if they're above the ratio, and then we would look at it and be really curious why. Is it that there's other factors that require a higher ratio to meet those needs? Is it a higher violence risk? Is it, your ability to access other resources and what those things look like? So that is something that's meant to be working through.
Deb, do you have anything to add to that?
No. We have talked about it in bargaining, and if it's something that, we get a lot of that BCNU and get email, it'll be on the list again.
Yeah, bargaining at BCNU.org. It's open, and we're receiving, and we read every single email that comes in.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
And this is like a completely naive and uneducated sort of not catch, but I'm going to a pension workshop on Thursday. I don't really know much.
With Megan.
But I have heard like rumblings about, is it possible for the nurses to kind of join the firefighters and the police, that certain group?
Where they can retire early?
What?
So for earlier retirement, is that?
Yeah, for like earlier retirement, just because we're sort of, we're in that, we have risks to our job, the public safety, or the mental health, the injury, like we just, burnt out earlier than a lot of other sort of professions.
Yep.
And then for me, as a second year coming into nursing, I don't even work full time. I can't even imagine. I did, and then I burned out. It's not 1.7.
Yep.
But I want to get in, work, and get out. So in terms of like attracting people into it, be like, come in, work hard, and then retire.
So it's something that we could work on. It is not an easy change to make at all.
It's against pension rules right now.
Yeah, as Deb is just saying, it's against the pension rules right now, which is the truth. It would require amendment of those rules and that approach. So again, not impossible, very, very, very hard to do. And the downside that a lot of people don't consider is that fire and police contribute a lot more to the employers contribute a lot more to the pension in order to buy that benefit. So it would mean a meaningful increase in nurse contributions to the pension plan. So again, not impossible. It's something that could happen, but it can't happen overnight. It would require significant lobbying efforts and significant changes to the pension regime
Yeah, I understand there's tons I don't know.
Yeah, no, don't ever be afraid to ask a question you don't know. It's a good question. It's a really good question. Yeah, in the back.
Hi, can you just talk more about the health benefits trust?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't really know what that is.
No, and a lot of people don't. And so a health benefits trust is a relationship between the union, between the membership and the employer. And what ends up happening is there's a pool of money, and we have representatives to the trust, and the employer has representatives to the trust. Oftentimes they're and there's sometimes a third party involved as well. And what you do is you effectively self-determine as a group with the employer and the membership how you spend the money, and it's jointly contributed to, and decisions can be made by the organization in consultation with the other trustees. You become trustees in the trust, which means you've got a fiduciary obligation to the trust, to the benefit of everyone, and you make decisions on what benefits you have and what benefits you can afford going forward. It also means that you can significantly increase contributions from members, and in some cases have to, depending upon the costs of benefits. The downside, as I see it, is that then you're in a shared model, and as benefits, I have never seen benefit costs decrease. I've yet to see that. I wish we could see that. I don't see that happening, and you're liable for it on a go-forward basis. Right now, the employer's liable. We're not. They pay 100% of the benefits that we've negotiated, and we do not.
And when when benefits increase, the employer pays it. We don't. And in the joint model, you make a formula, and then sometimes that gets changed if you're not contributing enough, and then the nurses would have to contribute more potentially if costs go up, such as LTD costs or any other benefits. So the idea of having a joint interest is interesting. Having the access to the information would be really nice, but the downside is, of course, you're stuck because benefits are always going to go up. So.
Yeah, and if it's well funded, so if it's tons and tons and tons of money in the trust, it's never an issue as long as the trustees make decisions that the trust can afford, and trusts invest money and it goes up and it goes down, and if investments turn sour and the trust loses a lot of money, a lot of income, and benefits continue to go up, it can sometimes result in a bit of a challenge for the membership, and some tough decisions to be made in terms of what it can afford, and sometimes you have to carve back benefits, and then we are co-responsible for that, which is empowering and gives us an opportunity to make our own decisions, based on who we elect as a trustee. But it's not without risk.
And when the community bargaining association set theirs up, in one of the last rounds, the community bargaining association, one of the other unions, they didn't fund it accurately or adequately, and so it did cause a lot of issues for them, and they had to really look at the funding model for that.
So who ultimately decides that we go that route? Is it the membership? Is it the government? Who decides that that's the route that we're going to go?
It could ultimately be your bargaining committee, if the bargaining committee were to receive that direction.
From the members.
From the members, yeah. And that benefits door is already open to crack with respect to massage benefits, because massage benefits have gone up a lot over the years. I was looking at those numbers, and I can't remember what it started at, like a couple $1 million, and now it's as high as, what is it, Deb? Do you remember?
No, not off the top of my head.
It's a lot.
I think I put a mental block on it.
I don't want to remember it either. But it's unlimited massage for members and their families, and so in the last 2 rounds of bargaining ago, the door was open. In the last round of bargaining, it was open a little bit more. What we did in this last round of bargaining is we didn't want to deal with it. We weren't ready to deal with it. We needed to better understand it, and so we moved it down the road to year after next, 2026. So that we didn't have to deal with the massage benefits we would turn into. And there's lots of pressure. They're wanting us to be in a joint benefit trust like everybody else, because it decreases their liability. And so there'll be a number of questions about benefits in the survey, the bargaining survey. There was a here and then over here again. So Corey first, and then
I have a couple of questions. I'm sorry. The first one is about the benefits. Do you have an idea about like the sister
No, so no, I don't have that information at my fingertips. What I understand is what Deb just said, is that, and I don't know the details of that negotiation either, but I understand negotiation pretty well. And what I understand is that it was underfunded and they found themselves in some dire straits. The government through HEABC came to the table and resurrected that and put a whole bunch more money in because it was underfunded. I don't know what that cost them. I don't have line of sight there. I don't know what that meant in terms of negotiation, what promises were made to get access to that amount of money. I understand it was a meaningful amount of money. And my guess is that there were strings attached to that. Is my best guess. And so that's a risk, is that you might have a government that says, you're on your own. We're not topping it up. You know what, we hit 2008 and investments crashed and you've lost half the value of your trust. Sorry, that's on you.
The paramedicals, Joint Benefit Trust, HSPBA, theirs was also in a similar situation. They Me-Too'd us on round 4 last, and were successful. They got a bunch of money from the government, but it went into their trust. And so that's how they've been able to pay up their trust and make it a little bit more healthy. So, but it comes from somewhere, right? Either it comes out of your bargaining or something. Yeah.
My other question is, with the rural incentives that have just been announced and released, we're kind of in an interesting area where there's our regional hospital at Trail, the only place around us that was not included in that. So I'm expecting to see a mass exodus from our most vital hub into these surrounding, which are like a 15 to 20 minute drive to work. What do we do in our centers? Like, I'm a little bit scared to go to work if all my nurses leave me. And why, maybe I should leave too. Like, it doesn't seem like there was a lot of thought put into it.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of thought put into it, for sure, and a lot of negotiation, a lot of pushing to expand those lists as broadly as we could. But it was a negotiation, and negotiations are give and take. It's not all take. So I think that what we do, and what I would suggest, I welcome your thoughts, Shane. What I would suggest we do is we keep track of that, and we listen to the nurses. The nurses are saying, I'm moving. I'm going to go get that $8,000 a year by driving 20 minutes. And if we have a whole bunch of people say that, and a whole bunch of people sign on to a document, just imagining that they might do that, and we keep track of that, and we get that document, then we're in a position to go to the ministry and say, hey guys, you fucked this up. Look at what's going to happen. And there are, 70% of the nurses are saying they're leaving. Maybe you should revisit that, and maybe you should include trail. And so that would be my hope, is that we could be relevant, be on the ground, we could be engaging, and we could be talking to those nurses and saying, before you go, if you're going to do that, what if you sign a petition? We can pull a formal petition together. We can help. We can get some people on the ground. Thinking about our campaign officers. Deanna's right over there, and walk around and see what's going to happen. And if a meaningful percentage of that workforce is saying we're going to bail, then I think that it'll give us a tool to renegotiate. Do you have any thoughts, Shelley?
No, just what Corey was saying. I mean, KBRH is our most challenging site to staff, and it's a 20-minute drive. Lots of people even live in Castlegar or in Nelson, and so we do. When we saw that, I think there was an immediate concern of that pull. And so I think it's a great strategy to start to look
I
at.
don't understand what you saw, like, let's see, I didn't read it.
So the rural incentive is they listed a bunch of rural towns that if you hold a permanent position there, you get a bonus of $2,000 every quarter. And all the areas around here were listed except for Trail. Castlegar, Nelson, Downlow.
Yes, so that's the target.
So if you were in any of those areas and hold a position, you'll get a bonus. But not if you're in Trail.
When did that happen?
The monies were announced on March 1st. We were involved in discussion. We pushed for sure for more communities to be involved. We were successful in increasing the number of rural and remote communities by a meaningful number, but it didn't include Trail. And so, in large measure, the announcement that was made on March 1st was about recruitment, very meaningful recruitment incentives. up to $30,000 for some communities to bring new nurses into the province, because the monies that we negotiated were to the benefit of nurses, to be to the benefit of ratios, and so that's how the government is spending some of that money, and they did consult with us. They didn't negotiate with us, but we were unsuccessful in including Trail and some other communities that we had hoped to. So the government's spending that money to bring nurses here, and it's a lot of money, 30,000 in some communities, 20 in others, up to 15 in others. It was light on retention, but the one retention initiative is the one we're talking about, which is in those communities that are typically difficult to staff, 2,000 a quarter up to a maximum of 8, based upon full-time hours. It'll be prorated based upon full-time hours.
And there are rules around it, right? So for the recruitment, you have to, sign a return of service, and there are different rules around that money and how you get it.
And they tried to do it in a way that you can't get that money if you're already in BC. If you're in BC and you're working in BC, you can't move to another community and get a $30,000
Working
bonus.
under the health system. If you were an agency nurse, though, you could get the money if you took a BC, like a regular position for a health authority.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really great idea, Jim, and something that I think as a regional team, because this has been something that we are slightly concerned about, and I don't think it was anything intentional. It's not the government saying, yeah, we just want to do something bad to Trail. I think it's sometimes just a lack of understanding of sort of the regional context of what that could look like. A 15-minute drive down the road is not that difficult, or someone actually just working in their home community.
But having the evidence is good. Like, it can't just be anecdotal, right?
Yeah.
So we need the names.
I'm pretty sure everyone in Trail would sign.
Yeah, they
I
would.
mean, it's not a problem.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great strategy.
Perfect.
I just had a question about ratios and there's going to be a lot of rotation changes that come with this. And my understanding is we have a couple rotation specialists, and I know myself don't have a lot of student education on rotations, and there's a lot of questions around that and different ideas of how rotations are done. I guess there's a request from Miss Lovely Stewart that if we can get some provincial
We've built it.
Yeah.
So we built an education, an AOM education. So we're just going to trial it on our LROs, and if it runs well and it's understandable, so I don't get rotations out there, hopefully, so it'll be a good one as well.
On the same page.
Yeah, we'll get that out to the stewards, and also I think we'll also have some ideas about how to limit the rotations that will have, changes that will have to happen.
Okay.
In the system, there are a lot of ideas floating out around that.
And we may have to hire some help.
Yeah.
We've got, at least on a temporary basis as these changes are occurring. And we do have, we've got some money to assist with that. Not a ton of money. It was only $5 million, but it is, but we might be able to staff up a little bit on that particular issue.
And adding to lines that already exist, right? You just add extra lines. If you need 4 nurses, you got 3, I don't know,
Let's
And
not
if
change
there-
everything.
No,
Please, yeah.
we're not doing those.
Is there a pause on rotation changes currently because of this nurse-patient ratio stuff?
Yeah, the health authorities have recently, I feel like an overreaction has happened. There was some rotation changes that we were taking back on because they weren't appropriate. They were cutting staff, or we knew, like, hey, look, we're going to need to add lines, not be taking them away. So there was some pushback from the union on some units, and what happened just recently that we've got to kind of dig into is word that the health authorities have paused all rotations, even ones that were like meaningfully needed and almost ready. So we have some work and chatting to do with the health authorities, because that just kind of came out in the last few weeks.
And I can speak to that within IH because, Cheryl Whittleton, the chief nursing officer, is sitting on a lot of these committees, so we chat a lot about this. And so they did put a halt to everything, and I think there was a number of reasons for that because, as Jim mentioned, there was that increase to the base bed count as well as ratio announcements. And so the employers had information about the increase to the base bed count, so they were rolling out new rotations that weren't actually going to bring them to ratio. So you were gonna have a rotation change, and then, you know, a month later, or 6 months later, that medical unit is gonna need another rotation change. So at least within IH, what Cheryl has told me is everything has to go through her. So it's not that everything can't go forward, it's just there has to be like a conversation around, this is why we're doing this, because managers were actually just going ahead without even consulting LR and doing rotation changes. So they've just while they get things sorted out, they're like, let's put things on hold. You can get it approved, it just has to go up before they'll approve it.
Because we all know how disruptive rotation changes are, so to have one and then to find out you have to have another one 2 months later is too much.
Yeah. And so if you're running into that, like at a local level, you know, you can bring that to your LR team, you can bring it to one of the stewards or myself to make sure that it gets where it needs to go, if there's unnecessary barriers. But I also think it's important that we look at minimizing that disruption and pushing the health authority to say, okay, well, if you're doing a rotation change, then put it where it needs to be, right? Don't do one and then do another one.
And what's Cheryl Blessing?
Cheryl Whittleton.
Sorry?
Cheryl Whittleton. She's the chief nursing officer.
Yeah, because we put in a rotation change, because like long-term care, like, you know, and we're trying to mitigate having 5 empty lines, and then we put that in like 2.5 months ago, and then they tell us that they're putting a hold on it, where we're trying to come up with our own solutions, you know.
Yeah, I would connect in with a steward who can connect in with LR and move that through.
I'm wondering where you're going to get the staff.
Yep, that's a big question.
Kind of an obvious one. Like, I didn't hear anybody say how you're going to actually solve this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a whole bunch of things happening at the same time. And so there's the March 1st announcement is not insignificant in terms of recruitment. There are international recruitment efforts afoot. Trying to balance the IAN situation and not taking away from other developing countries in a way that is going to negatively impact them. That's what we're being told. There is, I don't think it's happened yet.
Increased seats?
Yeah, increased nursing seats. There are a couple of pilot projects in terms of trying to increase nursing seats here. There is a push, and I will address specifically, there's a push, and there's a push at almost every single meeting that I have with ministry about our unvaccinated nurses and why are you not bringing them back? That's something that I raise, not in every single meeting that I have, but almost every single meeting that I have. And we're waiting to find out what happens here in terms of the Emergencies Act and the lifting of the Emergencies Act, because we're now, at least according to Adrian Dix today, just out of respiratory season, and the mask mandate is coming down. So I've demanded, and I've not seen any evidence, scientific evidence whatsoever to justify that our unvaccinated nurses are not back at work. And I've demanded it.
Well, we're working in other provinces, travel nursing.
Sorry?
We're working in other provinces, travel nursing.
I know we're the last vestige of that approach, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. So we continue to push there, and that will certainly be a help. There's no doubt at all. There's no magic solution, but I think that expending the monies that have been put forward, a $30,000 recruitment initiative is not insignificant for the North. 20,000 and 15,000 for other areas is not insignificant. And there's a push unlike any other in terms of trying to bring nurses into British Columbia. I know that we are engaging in some cases nationally, in some cases internationally, and trying to find pathways for nurses to come from other countries faster. There's an effort currently in the UK because nurses in the UK, if you've been in the news there, are very unsatisfied with their working conditions. And they're a country that could come, subject to immigration, come and land and work right away. I know that there's a recruitment trip planned to the UK. And I know that there will be some effort that we'll be exercising as well to assist in that effort to bring nurses over from the UK. So there's unprecedented efforts to recruit, and what will happen there and what that will look like, we need to see. We don't know. but we anticipate setting the impact of ratios no sooner than this fall. We think that it's not going to start having an impact in this province until at least then. And we know this is a long-term situation and a long-term plan. It's not a short-term panacea at all. Not at all.
I think the other piece to that as well is when you look at the average FTE of nurses in this province, it's not full-time. And so creating an environment, and Carrie Morrison, one of the ladies from the Ministry of Health leading this work, talks a lot about creating practice environments where people can thrive, right? If your work wasn't so exhausting, if you were fully staffed, could you work full-time? Could you stay a little longer in your career? You know, those types of things as well. Yeah, would you come back? And so looking at, it's these, a bunch of little pieces that I think will increase the staffing on the units, and as a unit gets better, I think then people are drawn to that. And we've seen that flexibility in the contract. You know, I know IH is going to release their shift exchange pool form here soon, and you know, things like that, that these were things that were negotiated that we haven't seen fully implemented, but I think they will give nurses some of what they need to be able to work maybe a little bit more or have that balance that they need.
Yeah, and we're still waiting to see the impact of the agreement. We're the highest paid in I can't say Canada because I think in Nunavut they're slightly ahead of us. But of the CFNU unions, we're the highest paid. We need to see what impact that has. We're already seeing, and I'm hearing anecdotally and directly in some cases, that as a result of the ad pay, we're seeing nurses who were preparing to retire staying. And we haven't felt the impact of that yet. I'm certainly hearing it a lot. That was part of the design of ad pay, was to recognize nurses' late career with the hope that exactly that would be what happened. And that not having that retirement attrition, which we've had every year in the 43 years BCNU has existed, if we don't have that retirement attrition, if some nurses come back to work for that, the benefit of ad pay, which was a meaningful increase, that hopefully that will pump up the system. And there's also a real movement to deal with the agency nurses as well. And I don't know what I can. Some things I can say and other things I cannot. What I will say generally is that the government is absolutely and fundamentally against profit going into private corporations that deal with healthcare. And so we're trying to deal with agency nurses in a number of different ways, including them being eligible. If they're only working for agencies from other provinces, even if they're BC nurses only working for agencies, they'll be eligible for that recruitment incentive with a 2-year return of service. And so what the government's doing is they're buying, pardon?
As an agency nurse or as an employee of Interior Health?
They'd have to come on as an employee.
So they're no longer an agency nurse?
Correct.
So you're recruiting the agency nurses to be employees?
Correct, with a 2-year return of service. And so the view is the government is buying with some of the money that we negotiated at least 2 years to help prop the whole system up and to help change the approach to the system. And so it's not one initiative, it's dozens of initiatives that are in play, and we need to see the efficacy of them, and we're hoping and praying that it works.
Educated. So we have in home health, we have a nurse in India. He was an ICU nurse, and his wife was also an ICU nurse. They have been trying for at least 3 years to get their license in BC. Yep. They just recently went to Alberta, wrote the NCLEX, passed the NCLEX, got full licensing, unconditional in Alberta, and still can't come transfer to BC.
Yeah. I'd like that story to surface and to land. Good job.
I'll also be able to
I'll give you
connect
the
with
contact.
college.
You can reach out to everyone.
Perfect.
Yes, please, because that the most recent increase in college fees that you're not having to pay for because of this last agreement was because of the staffing up that the college has done at the insistence of government to start processing IENs and to start moving that forward, because historically it's taken a long time, and we're being told, and the college is saying, that timeline is really drastically reduced. If that's not the case, then I need that information so I can put it.
He jumped through everything. He went to Australia, but his licensing there is supposed to transfer easier to BC, and they still couldn't.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. So we'd like those facts, because we'll put them under under Steve Brown's nose and say, look, like here's the situation. Like,
Yeah,
fix
it's
it.
even been connected to Cheryl Littleton through our manager to try and why isn't this being done?
Yeah, we're told that they have staffed up significantly, and that they've taken that very long wait list, which can be a couple of years long, and they've shrunk it down to something like, what, 6 weeks or something, they said.
Allegedly.
But clearly that's not, that may not be the case, and so,
No.
devil's in the detail, let's get those facts, and we'll put them under the
I know
nose.
he's just done another formal application, now they've got Alberta license, and now he's waiting to hear from them again.
Yeah, assuming all of that is true, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
So I watched the AGM from the BCCNM. They had a little video posted. And so they mentioned that they had put through just above 500 international nurses, but they also stated that they have never had so many fraudulent applications. And so because of the expediting this whole process, I mean the increased risk of bringing in international nurses that actually are not qualified to do this job is also a higher risk. And everybody should be aware of that when you're working with nurses, that it may not be what was presented. So that's an issue. The second issue I have is that I have a nurse who received a medical exemption from International and works for a travel agency company here that got her a contract in an interior health facility. Now, the interior health facility would not accept the medical exemption, but through the travel agency company, they gave permission for her to use her medical exemption. So she is now working for an interior health facility, making double the pay with accommodation, travel, and it is a non-unionized worker in the workplace. So, I don't know what you guys think is going on, but there's something else that is happening, and I can't figure it out if it's to destabilize union presence. I can't figure out if it's, I don't know. I can't put the dots together, but I'm telling you that what you see is not what you see. So that's my input.
Corinne told me about this one, and I've talked to Derek.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be interested in knowing about that.
But it's private information, so they're, the medical's done as
I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I'm not alive to that particular situation. I, of course, vehemently oppose that. Like I would oppose any nurses who, fraudulent applications through BCCNM. We are aware of a couple of situations where that has occurred, and where, taking steps to ensure that doesn't happen. Where people allegedly write the exam and pass the exam somewhere, and then go through another jurisdiction and then land here. Turns out that they actually never wrote the exam, or somebody else wrote the exam for them. But these are risks, and what we're seeing is that there are some jurisdictions that have opened the doors very, very, very wide. Nova Scotia is an example, and where they've included 3 or 4 other jurisdictions that BC hasn't included in terms of being able to fast track these nurses, and they're having one hell of a challenge. They have the greatest number of IEN applicants.
5,000.
Very, very great number. But they're having huge challenges on the ground, and so it's a balance between ensuring the right precautions to protect the public, and at the same time trying to be as responsive as possible to the staffing crisis, and to try to meet ratios as soon as we can. So
it just confirms that the current political decisions that are going on around this are not very intelligent in regards to providing the best possible care to the public. It is deliberately blocking Canadian trained nurses for being in the workplace. It is costing the public 4 times the cost. It's destabilizing your union presence within the workplace. You actually are losing power. And we're doing our best to do what we can to assist you in this process. And after 2.5 years, we are not on the same team as you, no matter the nice presentation where, we all have to stand united. No, we actually at times have to hold people accountable, and that's what needs to happen with this union.
So thank you for sharing that. I I don't subscribe to that point of view, but I appreciate having the opportunity to express it.
When I was just trying to Google and find out what the attrition rate is for nurses when they come out of, this 2.5 to 4 year program. And in Michigan, it said it's like 18% in the first year of nurses leave, and then a whopping 56% by 5 years. And so I'm curious if there's any discussion about, refresher courses versus opening more seats to get those already trained nurses back into the workforce should they actually desire to come and work in that conducive work environment.
That's a good point too.
Yeah, you raise a really, really good point, and I think that there's a lot of young nurses who and not necessarily even chronologically young, but inexperienced nurses who have left the system prematurely, and that I'm not aware whether that effort is afoot.
There are other ways to get licensed besides a refresher. As long as it's less than 10 years, you can do a supervised practice experience, so many hours, but 400 hours.
But that's one of the reasons why we've got 150 mentors, and are trying to roll that out as quickly as we can. To the expense of actually rolling it out in a perfect way, or as close to perfect way. Our hope was that the mentors would be rolled out, they would all have the same training, experience, support, set of expectations. But that has not been the case. They're being rolled out sooner than we can put those programs in place, and so we're going to have to try to play catch up on that. But certainly having those experienced nurses and giving nurses who have a lot of experience another opportunity for a different role is of benefit to the system, and I know that those less experienced nurses are definitely a target for those mentorship positions.
But there's also, we heard the EMP, one of the EMP reps talk last year, she said there's like over 5,000 nurses sitting on LTD waiting for individual accommodation or something. Is there anything that we could do, or is there something that could be done about, kind of fast tracking that process instead of just having them? Because they could do triaging or.
I don't think we have that many files, so.
I'm not alive to that number.
Yeah, that sounds extremely large. I think we would know that.
I will say that because I deal with both Interior Health and Northern Health. Northern Health, the number of DTA files is really quite low because in Northern Health, they want their nurses back to work. Interior Health has many more files, and the process in Interior Health seems much more obstructionary. We're working on trying to improve that, but that's the fact that IH is not nearly as I'm trying to say it really nicely. Interior Health is not working as diligently as they could be at getting our DTA nurses back to work.
Yeah, because I've attended, a few of these workers with disability caucus meetings, and a lot of them now saying the same thing. They just put us in, we want to get back to work, we don't want to be sitting at home, on leave, we want to be back to work. It's just, a lot of them feel burned out because they have to chase down the DTA themselves, and a lot of times it's just, running on a hamster wheel.
Well, DTAs are tripartite, which means IH has to look for a job for them, the union tries to look for a job for them, and they have to look for a job for themselves. Okay. So it's not that no Interior Health is solely responsible for finding the job. The member has to look as well.
Okay.
I think one of the differences I've really heard about Interior Health versus some of the other health authorities is IH is less willing to make tweaks to a job to to accommodate the person, they will say, no, you cannot do that job, even if it means, some simple things to accommodate them. They'll say, no, you cannot be accommodated into that job, find a different job.
Yeah.
And that seems to be one of the major differences, and I think there is conversation happening around that, and especially when you're looking at temporary accommodations, that's often left up to the individual managers, it seems, to sort of be willing to have that flexibility, and so some will and some won't. And that's really, really challenging, because I think, where we have nurses who are no longer connected to the work site, and, their chances of success are really good at the workplace.
But it's a good idea in terms of the focus.
If it was the number of positions, like if we're gonna be getting more nurses in, why couldn't we make some of them like HEABC or
So it's a good point. It's a really good point. I see there's a lot more sugar over here too that hasn't been eaten. I hope there'll be nothing left by the time everybody leaves. Feel free to get up and grab some more food.
Brianne's really chatty.
Did you get many results from like the post-ratification survey? Or like what was there like a number of like how many people actually filled that out? Or was it?
I can't remember.
I don't know. We could probably reach out, and I'm sure Courtney would have that information.
I guess I feel like there was like so much talk during bargaining and after, and like a lot of social media stuff and like a lot of things that I know I was directing members in KLH to fill out that post-ratification, so they like it's at the front of their mind what they actually want for next bargaining and like what worked and didn't. And I didn't know if that was done or.
Definitely, we had a number of people respond. I can't remember how many, but it's
like
something that before we get back in, we'll be reviewing all of that.
Could you send an email about that?
Yeah.
To me, and then we can follow up, because I don't know.
And then, sorry, you were just saying that there's things are going to be done differently next round. In what way?
I want to talk to council about that first.
Okay.
I've got a bunch of ideas, not all original ideas, but from